Good evening, Keepers of the Flame. We have a lot on tap this evening, I know, and tomorrow morning also. So in view of the time constraints we are under, I will endeavor to acquaint you with the information that I have to present to you as quickly as possible. I believe the last time that we had an opportunity to speak to you was at the New Year's conference. And of course, Easter is coming kind of late this year, so there's been an opportunity for many things to happen since that time. I have some pictures for you describing and showing a number of the activities that we have been involved in, things that you may be interested in, that I'd like to share with you initially, and then discuss some very definite situations that need to be brought to your attention. Spring, of course, is the time of the year when things begin to green up at the inner retreat, and this certainly has begun to occur this year. I believe this picture was just taken probably within the last week or so. And that's a picture from the North Ranch. As you can see, things have begun to turn green, and all of the things that need to be done at the time of the year when things turn green are certainly in full swing. First of all, this is the time of the year when the lambing has to occur, and we're definitely knee-deep in lambs at this point in time. About 1,300 sheep that we have. That means a total of about they're running about 140 to 150% this year. In other words, an average of 1.4 to 1.5 lambs per sheep. So that's going to mean somewhere close to about 2,000 lambs. This is the inside of one of the lambing sheds. Each sheep gets its own little pen, which is referred to as a jug. And when they've had their lamb, they are put into the little lambing jug, and they have to spend 24 to 48 hours in there with their lamb or lambs, as the case may be, getting acquainted. Each one gets its own number, of course, so that we can keep track of them. And then they get moved out into the outside gradually into larger and larger pens until they actually, it takes them a period of time to become acclimatized to mixing with a larger number of sheep without, losing their identity, in effect, and not realizing who their mother is and who their lamb is and so on. That's kind of the way it works with sheep. It's also the time of the year that the cows are calving, of course, also. And with about close to 600 cows, we're kind of knee-deep in calves, too. So that has gone very well this year also. We've also been visited by the presence of some of our beasts of antiquity that we know of in history in the United States, and that is the American buffalo, or the American bison as it used to be known. We've had quite a few of these buffalo wandering onto the ranch this year from Yellowstone National Park, and we had the opportunity to meet them eye to eye, so to speak, and get a good look at them, and they got a good look at us too. We have mentioned the fact previously that we have opened our Montessori International preschool and elementary school at the Inner Retreat, and things are going quite well with the school. We have a total of almost 20 students now between the preschool and grades 1 through 6 of elementary, and the school is growing all the time as more people come. They're mostly staff members, but there are a few keepers' families who live locally who send their children to the school. And these are some pictures we had the opportunity to take during their own shop session, where some of the artisans who work at the Inner Retreat take the opportunity to teach the youngsters what they know in regard to mechanical things and general shop type work. And they took to it very well, and have really gotten into this shop work and building things, as they, of course, are seeing things built around them all the time. And boys and girls alike, they got together and made their little shop and have all involved in their carpentry projects. Spring is also the time, of course, for plowing and planting, and we have this year close to about 700 acres that need to be plowed and planted, as well as fertilized and all of the things that go along with that. And the people involved in the farm department are very intensely involved in that and in preparing for the irrigation season with such things as cleaning ditches and removing dead trees and brush growing along the sides of the various irrigation ditches. And we are also involved, in addition to preparing for the flood irrigating work by cleaning ditches, etc., with updating our own irrigation systems, primarily at the North Ranch. As many of you may know, when we purchased that property, we inherited certain irrigation systems with the ranch. Some of those were subject to a lease, which had been about a 12-year lease with a leasing company in Chicago that expired this year. This was the last year of the lease for 3 of those large pivot irrigation systems. And in negotiating with the leasing company, it was determined that a buyout of the equipment would not be to our advantage, as they wished to have too much money. In effect, they were trying to make their money all over again and practically sell the equipment for 2 or 3 times what it would be worth on the used market. So instead, we allowed them to take the equipment back, which they were somewhat surprised at by the time it finally happened, because they figured that we would end up paying the price. And we entered into a new lease for 3 new pivot systems that will run over the next 7 years. And those have been in the process of being installed at the North Ranch. The system we chose is a very innovative, modernized system that will do a much better job for us from an irrigation standpoint. It's state-of-the-art. Instead of being run on electricity, which most of the old pivot systems ran on, this system runs by hydraulic pressure and hydraulic oil that circulates throughout all of the towers in each of the systems. Each set of wheels is run by a hydraulic motor, which is in turn supplied by a hydraulic pump at the center of the system. The advantage to this system is that the entire pivot is continuously running in a straight line, rather than each of the wheels surging ahead at intervals where it may move 10 or 20 feet at a time, and that often results in areas not getting irrigated as well as other areas, and kind of a striping effect on the field. This will overcome that problem, and at this point in time we're very happy with it. But there was quite a bit of construction work involved in setting these pivots up. We did most of the work ourselves with one of the helpers from the factory, and a local keeper of the flame who has now become a dealer for this particular irrigation system, which is called TL Irrigation Systems, and he is in the process of also, of course, trying to market these to other farms and ranches in the area. So in this process, we have gained quite a bit of experience with the construction of irrigation systems. These are all our own people working in the construction and setup, and this has just now been completed, and even some of the little people get to help set up the systems occasionally. There's quite a bit of technology that goes into these irrigation systems, and of course over the years they have made rapid advancements in the systems design and the engineering, to the point that what we're buying today for close to the same price as what they were 10 years ago when the old systems were bought. The technology, however, is far greater than what it used to be, and they can be expected to last for a much longer period of time. And this is what the finished product looks like. In addition to the pivot system, we have designed a new gravity feed irrigation system utilizing wheel line sprinklers, such as we see in this picture, to irrigate about 200 acres of land at the office area at the North Ranch. That is the unit of buildings that is at the very most northern point of the North Ranch, which also happens to be about the best cropland. At that point in time, we have water at a sufficient height above the fields in ditches that it can be channeled into pipes and then used to sprinkle the cropland there with a gravity feed system. And that is in the process of being installed at this time also. The new pivots, incidentally, at the North Ranch will irrigate about 475 acres of cropland, plus the 200 here, so that'll be about 675 acres of cropland there under new irrigation. We also have on tap for this spring, as soon as we can get to it, after the completion of the North Ranch systems just described, to return to the Reese Creek pipeline project, which you may recall was going on last summer and into the fall. Unfortunately, before that system was finished, the onset of winter took place and the ground froze, and we reached a time when work could no longer be done on it due to frozen ground. So that will be resumed probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks, and we expect to finish the Reese Creek system hopefully by sometime in June, hopefully prior to the July conference. And that, of course, is the gravity feed system that is intended to irrigate all of our truck farm produce cropland property, which is at the South Ranch, and is a total of approximately between 80 and 100 acres of irrigated land there for vegetables. In the meantime, until this pipeline is finished, we do have a pump set up at the Yellowstone River, which pumps water into the system, which is really how it was run all last year, since the pipeline had not been completed. In addition to these agricultural projects, which are ongoing and which will be taking place even throughout the summer, we have certain construction projects going on at the ranch, which I wanted to acquaint you with. First of all, we have the installation of new housing for staff at the South Ranch office area. This area is intended to become the headquarters of the farming and ranching operation at the South Ranch, and we are installing housing here which will be adequate for between 30 and 50 people. This involves tapping into a well that was drilled last summer to provide water to each of these housing units. There are a total of 5 housing units, each of which will have its own water and sewage system, electricity, gas, etc. So they will be complete year-round housing for staff. And these units were purchased last year from the state of Colorado from a former Exxon oil shale project that went out of business in Colorado. So they were purchased for about a little bit less than half the price than Exxon originally bought them for, although Exxon had never used them. They still are actually in brand new condition, since we haven't used many of them either. We're in the process of installing them in various places around the ranch, and this is the first installation that will be completed. So we are in the process of installing the water system, the sewage system, which has a permit from the state, propane gas for the heating system, electricity, and as stated in the other projects I described to you last year, these mobile units, which are each mobile home, as it were, is split into 3 separate units, such as a motel room or something along this line. Each of these will be recessed into the ground so that the mobile unit sits at ground level instead of being blocked up in the air. So they will look as if they were constructed in place. So the work that I've described to you involves a lot of trenching work. You'll see a lot of piles of dirt being moved around because every time another pipeline goes in, you have to dig the earth out and move the dirt around, and sometimes it seems like you're just moving piles of dirt from one place to another. But eventually the pipes do get in the ground and the dirt does get put back in the trench, and you have a completed system. These men are engaged in the process of trenching with our trencher, both for water and for sewage lines. And when the trenching is completed, these trench shores go into place. They are a safety device to hold the trench walls up for people working down in the bottom of the trench so that the walls can't collapse in on them. And then, of course, once they're in there, then the pipelines are put together and the project is completed. The next project that we are involved in is a project that has been ongoing for some period of time. It has been progressing at a somewhat of a slow pace, partly because of the fact that it is a fairly large project. We have labeled this particular project the new ranch headquarters at the South Ranch. And when I say headquarters, I'm referring primarily to the fact that this area will become our new headquarters for construction projects, engineering projects, administrative offices on the ranch for future construction type operations. They will include our main shop areas and the commercial and industrial type operations at the ranch, as opposed to the farming and ranching operations. Our intent is to keep the current ranch office area as the headquarters for farming and ranching, and to move our construction and industrial type operations up to the new ranch headquarters. This area is located in the field immediately adjacent to the entrance road to the Mulherron Creek drainage. Many of you who came to the conference last year may have noticed the fence line being constructed in the last flat open area prior to entering the Mulherron Creek Canyon. And this is the area that is being worked on for this project. The project involves a number of different components, but the west end, which we see as the top of the picture here, will be an approximate 30-acre nursery and tree farm area. This area was very rocky when we took it over, but it has now been completely rock-picked several times over and is in the process of being set up even today as a permanent nursery and tree farm. And this is where we'll grow all of our nursery and landscaping stock and reforestation products for the logging work that we are involved in. There also will be some orchard trees, apple trees, plums, and other fruits that can grow in that climate in a certain amount of that acreage, which totals, as I said, about 30 acres. On the bottom portion of the picture, and the area that was more marginal as far as land being able to grow something is concerned, fairly rocky ground, the new ranch headquarters is being designed and constructed. Now, this picture here shows a closer view of the overall site plan, which we have drawn up for guiding our design concept for the entire development. And this shows, of course, the nursery and tree farm area. The south end of this shows a close-up of the buildings area, which includes a shop for the maintenance of heavy equipment, construction equipment, trucks, buses, and autos for ranch use and for the organization's use in general in future years. And that is located to the very right-hand portion of the picture. Just to the left of that is a large equipment yard that is almost 2 acres in size, about 85 to 90,000 square feet for the housing of all of our construction equipment and materials for future construction projects. To the left of that is the warehouse and what we have previously referred to as the food barn. That food barn is in the process of being constructed right now. The basement is being worked on, since it will have a basement, and there's concrete work that's going to be going on in there. Again, we were somewhat hampered from working on that this winter because the ground froze. We were hoping to get that basement in right before the winter, but somewhat of an early frost came in, and along about December it got really cold, down to about 30 to 40 degrees below zero for a week or 10 days, and that pretty much put an end to that. We are getting back to the time now that we can begin to work on that again, and that will take place as soon as the more pressing matters dealing with the agricultural improvements are taken care of for the season. To the left of that warehouse building includes a kitchen and dining hall, some pictures of which I have for you, which is in the process of being installed, and about 12 housing units for ranch staff working on various projects dealing with the construction trades in farming and ranching. And then to the left of that, we have on the very south end of that particular area a site picked out for a future chapel and meeting hall type of facility. That has not been planned in detail at this time, and the primary constraint that we're operating under there is the funding to be able to move forward with the construction of such a building. This is a more close-up elevation of how the kitchen and dining hall in relation to one of the housing units will look. The housing units again are the units that have 3 rooms in each building. They are mobile. They've been moved in on axles, and they will be placed recessed into the ground, more or less permanent placements, although they could be moved if necessary at some time in the future. That is on the left, and on the right is shown the concept back at that time of what the kitchen and dining hall would look like. It will look essentially the same as that, however it will be larger, somewhat larger than what is shown in this picture. These are pictures of the actual kitchen units being moved onto the site. There are a total of 7 units. They are again mobile. They were bought from ATCO, which is a manufacturer of mobile and modular buildings for various applications. And it is a commercial kitchen. It was used previously as a commercial kitchen on a large pipeline construction project in the state of North Dakota. These were moved in by our own trucks, transported onto the site by us, and they came from Casper, Wyoming. And it's a completely, the process is completely taken care of by truck, moving onto the site to its final location, where it is mounted on blocks and tied into the ground. And these pictures show the various parts of that operation. And when these buildings are fit together, they sit completely flush with one another, and the roof system is tied into one roof. And when you're walking inside of the building, you are not aware of the fact that it is 7 separate buildings. It would appear, for all intents and purposes, to be one building, and by the time it is completed on the outside, it will also appear to be one completed building. Only persons who had either seen these pictures or who had been involved in the construction of it will realize that it is anything more than one complete building. This shows the process of the building being jacked into place. The final movement is done with jacks to get the buildings to the way they're actually sitting flush with one another. The foundation is made of railroad ties. There's a certain bit of leverage work that has to go into the final movement of that building into place to the point that you get poles and logs and kind of pry them into place for the final inch or two. This shows the end of the building that you just saw being moved in, put into place, and of course, as you can see, it's very flush with the rest of the buildings. As soon as all of these 7 buildings were moved into place, the plan that we developed for this kitchen called for the building of the equivalent of an additional 2 units onto the 7 units. We are building these in such a way that they will also be mobile. In effect, we are building our own mobile homes, except they're kitchens, immediately adjacent to the other 7 mobile units that were moved in. The purpose for this was so that if we ever decided to move this kitchen for some reason, that the addition that we put onto it would also be movable. It did involve a certain extra amount of construction work, but in the end, it may be well worth our while to have built it in this manner. This kitchen will seat approximately 120 people, which is adequate to feed all of the people who work on the ranch now, and the kitchen itself can prepare food for at least 2 to 3 times that many people. So if staff members were eating in shifts who were working here, we could handle through this kitchen facility a total of up to 300 or 350 staff members working at the ranch sometime in the future. This is the construction work that's going on the additions to the kitchen unit, and this has been going on over about the past month. Most of the additions deal with additional cooler and freezer space and additional food preparation areas and some additional cooking space. All of the seating area for the dining hall came as complete as we needed it. We have been blessed with some very good weather in the past month, with a few notable exceptions. We did have a few snowstorms that kind of came and went overnight. One of them dumped about 6 inches of snow in about an hour. Very wet snow, which brought down most of the power lines, and we were without power for about 4 or 5 hours one evening. But that snow was really gone within a day, and most of the time we've had very excellent spring weather, very warm days. The ground does not freeze at night. The temperature does get dipped below freezing occasionally, but many nights, even in March and April, up until now, we have not had freezing weather at night. Many of the days have been very balmy. This is a picture of the construction work taking place at the new ranch headquarters on the septic system. There is a very elaborate sewage and septic system being constructed here to handle all of the people who would be able to use the facility and live there. We are making our own septic tanks instead of buying them. We found that we can make them ourselves, particularly the large ones for systems like this, for a third to even a quarter of the cost of what they would have to be bought for by even the most inexpensive suppliers. So these will be poured in place with our own concrete equipment, the concrete batch plant that we constructed last year, and our own mixer trucks. So we have the complete capability at this time of building anything that needs to be built out of concrete can be handled by us in-house. Now the next subject I wanted to discuss with you is the Livingston Industrial Park. I wanted to give you an update on what was going on here. This, of course, is an aerial photograph taken of the facility in the middle of the winter. We are in the process of developing the master plan for the industrial park and determining exactly what uses we will be putting to each of the buildings. We have, as was announced previously, planned on moving our entire Joyous Isle warehouse complex from Los Angeles here to the Montana Livingston Industrial Park, and we have chosen one of the buildings, which is the former truck shop building, to be utilized for that purpose. It's the building that had most of the offices in it, and we have just about completed at this time a complete interior redesign and renovation of that building to add additional offices to fit our needs and to construct a warehouse area and a shipping area for all of our publications inventory and the mailings and the shipments that go out on a daily basis. This particular plan is going to involve some very substantial changes to that building. In addition to that, we have done some planning work on the 3-story warehouse building. It was formerly used by them as a sawmill. It is used by Wagner prior to our coming to the property as a warehouse. We are going to be adding some insulation to that building. It was fairly poorly insulated. by building interior walls on the inside of each of the walls that surround the building and insulating them, and we will be converting that to primarily general warehouse storage for all sorts of equipment and inventory that the church has and must maintain on an ongoing basis. And as a matter of fact, we are currently leasing warehouse space in various locations, almost all of which will be able to be moved to that facility. This, of course, is a view of the industrial park from the highway. The three-story building is on the left-hand side of this, which is primarily a concrete block building. This is a view of the factory buildings that mobile homes were formerly constructed in. And this is the truck shop building that will be converted to the Joyous Isle offices and shipping and inventory warehouse. Now, in addition to this, we will be constructing on the site a kitchen and dining hall again for the people that work there, which is in excess of 100 people, and a chapel and meeting hall type facility of some kind that will serve the people who work there on a daily basis. There are extensive roof repairs to be done on most of the buildings since they've been left vacant now for about 4 or 5 years. There are repairs to be done on the roofs, all of which will be done by us. All of this work, which again is a fairly large undertaking when taken all into consideration, we expect to begin on this work with the personnel that we have available within the next 2 to 3 weeks, and to accelerate that as personnel become available later. It will be necessary to put a large number of personnel on this job eventually if we hope to get it done during the context of the summer. And it's my hope that as the summer progresses, as people come and attend the conference, that some can stay, particularly those who have construction and carpentry type skills, can stay for a period of time during the summer and help out on this, because our goal, of course, is to have it completed by the end of the summer. It's our goal to be able to move the Joyous Isle warehouse and offices to the industrial park by the end of the summer, at the very latest by the 15th of September. So I know that that's a very major undertaking, and with some assistance I do think it can be done. As far as the availability of space for lease to members, a number of people have inquired about this. We do not have any definite answer to be able to give on that at this time, because we have not completed our master planning of the entire facility. There is a substantial amount of space in the former manufacturing facility, which is a steel building, and it's very possible that space might be available for persons to rent for small shops or for a use-store-it type facility. And we have definitely thought in terms of designating one of the buildings on the site as a use-store-it type warehouse, which could be partitioned off into quite a number of separate units. So we will not know, however, until probably into June exactly what might be available in this regard. So probably by the time that the summer conference rolls around, we will have some definite answer on that. That brings me to the subject of Glastonbury. There has been a lot of information given at the past several Keepers of the Flame meetings on the various developments being undertaken at Glastonbury. These are very important to us, and of course it is something that we have had to pay a great deal of attention to, even at the same time that we have been trying to fulfill all the projects that we have at the ranch, many of which are in dire need of personnel, and they're understaffed and undermanned even as it is. Nevertheless, we are committed to moving forward with the development of Glastonbury and with taking the lead where necessary to assist in a program of development that others can follow in and can take designs which are of a prototype nature for the development of their own properties. So pursuant to this concept, we came upon an idea sometime earlier this winter, along about January or so, of approaching the architects that we have in Germany that we had met previously and have told you about, of designing a number of prototype Bavarian or Swiss type chalets, alpine chalets, to be built on a portion of our property at Glastonbury, and which could become model homes, and the plans of which could be made available to other persons wanting to build similar buildings at a much reduced rate. Normally, architects would charge in the range of 6 to 7% to design a custom house for a person, and certainly it never runs less than about 4% in this country for the design of a custom house. That would run into quite a bit of money if somebody had to pay this amount for the design of each and every house to be duplicated at Glastonbury. So what we have reached an arrangement with them to do is to design these prototypes and then to be able to turn around and to resell the plans to other interested persons at a much reduced rate, probably even less than 1%, probably in the range of 1/4 to 1/2% or so of the finished construction cost. These would be complete construction plans that a contractor could take. It would be a fairly simple matter to make alterations to be able to customize it for your needs, but the basic design and the building system would be there. In line with this thought, we felt it would be a good idea to not place one of these buildings on a large 20-acre parcel because of the expense involved. So we undertook to subdivide one of the parcels that we have at Glastonbury into a number of smaller lots. To that end, we filed an application with Park County for a minor subdivision, which is somewhat different from a normal subdivision in that a minor subdivision contains 5 or fewer lots. This particular minor subdivision contained 3 lots of about 2.5 acres and a remainder lot of about 14 acres. We did a large amount of work on this subdivision because we did want to make sure that from a technical and a development standpoint, everything was covered as far as getting the subdivision approvals from the county would be concerned, because they, of course, are entitled to review any subdivisions that are proposed before the planning board and then finally before the county commissioners. Normally, a minor subdivision, because it is a minor subdivision, the process is intended to be a summary process, a very abbreviated process where all questions that would normally be addressed in a subdivision do not have to be gone into. In this case, we went beyond the requirements of a minor subdivision to make sure that everything was covered. And as it turned out, it was a good thing that we did. The minor subdivision was presented to the county planner, and he had a very favorable reaction to it himself, because his general philosophy as a planner is that development should be small clustered lots as opposed to 20-acre type parcels spread out all over the place. So he had a favorable reaction to it, and a public hearing was scheduled by the planning board to consider the matter. That in itself was the subject of some dispute, since the state law made it very clear that a public hearing was not to be required for a minor subdivision, that the planning board should merely consider it in its own regular monthly meeting. Nevertheless, over our objection, the county attorney and the county planning board elected to publish notice of a public hearing, which was held on a date which I believe was about the 15th of March. We attended that hearing, and our experience there was that the planning board was somewhat nonplussed by the entire affair, didn't really know what to say about it or what to make of it, but the reaction, again, as I said, was generally favorable, particularly by the planner. And the planning board exhibited an intent at that time to pretty much go along with what the planner was telling them. What took place at that meeting finally was that they decided to reconvene on a subsequent date about 2 weeks later and to reconsider the matter as a so-called plat review committee. There was no mention of that being made into a public hearing. However, in the interim, apparently the members of the planning board decided to start talking to their neighbors and other people in the county about it, and when that meeting took place, they decided to make another public hearing out of it. Of course, there was no notice given in the meantime, so we did not attend the meeting with any preparation at all and with any intent of having to defend the subdivision as would normally be the case in a normal public hearing. So that meeting was attended by Richard Kaler, and at that meeting numerous members of the public were allowed to stand up and give comments, almost all of which were critical and almost all of which turned out to be related to the desire on the part of these people simply that we not be given any permission to have any subdivisions because of the fact that they just didn't want the church in the county. So all of that went on, and the result at the conclusion of that meeting, which was about a week ago, was that the planning board voted at the end of it and voted unanimously to deny the subdivision application. Of course, the planner had previously said that there was nothing wrong with it as far as he could tell and that it should be approved. So subsequent to that, because of the result of that, the planning board is not the final say on these matters. They are merely an advisory body. The body that makes the decision is the county commissioners of Park County, and they had only a few days after that in order to make up their minds as to what they were going to finally decide. We did a little bit of legal research over the weekend, and we found a case that stated quite clearly that the county has no authority whatsoever to hold a public hearing for a minor subdivision, much less to hold a second public hearing without any notice to the parties involved, and that in this previous case that had taken place in about 1978, that in a case where this had occurred, the court gave automatic approval to the subdivision because they had held a public hearing without being authorized to hold a public hearing. So over the weekend, we brought this to the attention of Commissioner Ken Spaulding and to the attention of the county attorney. And so this week, just a couple of days ago, the decision was announced that the county commissioners had unanimously approved the subdivision, overriding the planning board. We kind of viewed this as an important test case. We wanted to find out what kind of reaction we were going to get from the planning board, what kind of reaction we were going to get from the planner, and what kind of a reaction we would get from the county commissioners. And we have found that out at this point. And I think it does give us some very significant insight into the various forces at work and the motivations involved of the various bodies in the politics of that county. In approving the subdivision, the commissioners stated that it was the policy of the county commissioners to encourage the development of small acreage parcels, and that the planning board need not worry about the precedent-setting aspect of any subdivisions that might come before it for approval. That was one of the big points that was raised by all of the people who spoke against it, was that this would set a precedent, that we could come in and apply for future subdivisions and this precedent would have been set and it couldn't be turned down. They said that that should not be given any consideration, that each subdivision should be considered on a case-by-case basis. And so, again, as I say, that does give us some insight for the future. Since we now have the approval of this minor subdivision in hand, and we do have our 3 2.5-acre lots, we are proceeding with our architects for the design of 3 prototype Bavarian chalets, one of which will be a small single-family home, another of which will be a medium-sized single-family home, and the third of which will be a duplex designed into one chalet. That is the plan that will be taking place. We do hope that construction will begin on that sometime this summer. It is unclear at this point in time exactly how quickly that can start. This is, however, a joint effort of the Glastonbury, the community of Glastonbury itself, being the landowner of the parcels involved, as well as certain keepers of the flame that we have contacted who will act as contractors and as carpenters and workers on the project. Again, as I say, it is hopeful that this will begin later this summer. It is questionable, however, exactly how soon that those buildings will be completed. We do hope to have architectural drawings and renderings available, however, by the middle of the summer, which could be viewed by persons who might be interested in that. The next development taking place in Glastonbury, which has been discussed by us previously, is the mobile home park that we have discussed building there. We have done quite a bit of work on this and have conceived of the basic design matrix for this facility, and it has been officially titled now and will be known henceforth as the Golden Age Village at Glastonbury North. As I say, we have done quite a bit of the preliminary engineering on the project, the Golden Age Village at Glastonbury North. And as you can tell from the title of it, this development will be located at Glastonbury North. The area that is being set aside for this project is the area surrounding the ranch buildings at North Glastonbury, for those of you who have visited there before. It's a site of some 60 or 70 acres. It will include in it parks and playgrounds, a community center area, common land for the use of residents, streets, water system, sewage treatment, electricity, telephone, cable TV possibly, all of the various amenities that a person in civilization would want to have in their home will be included in the development. And this is more of a schematic concept of how this facility could be arranged. We have endeavored in designing it to seclude the mobile homes as much as possible from the view of the rest of the community and from surrounding landowners. And as a matter of fact, there are very few places from on the property, and particularly from surrounding landowners, where this development could even be seen. It really has turned out to be an ideal area because while it's very secluded, at the same time it's also a very open and spacious type area. It is not closed in upon by hills that you can't see out from. It has a very spacious view of the Absaroka Mountains and the various mountain ranges and the balance of the valley. Now this area, as I mentioned, will include a community center, and that will include an equestrian area, some tennis courts, possibly a parking area for people availing themselves of the services of the community center, and the community center itself will include administrative offices, a general store or market, a chapel or meeting hall, some meeting rooms, and things of this sort. Some of these homes will be facing endwise onto the street, and some of them will be facing broadside onto the street, and that will accommodate various design alternatives for mobile homes that are available today. Some of them are built more like a conventional home, with the broad side of the home intending to be the entrance and the part that faces the street, and some are built with the ends being the primary visual point of reference for the mobile home. Some of them, of course, have complete ends that are made just of windows where you can orient the home to face out to a mountain range or whatever. And this has been designed in such a way that the homes will not appear to be lined up as in a row. They will appear to be, spaced in varied directions, so that instead of merely having a view of somebody else's mobile home, you will have a view of mountains or trees or the rest of the valley. In other words, they won't be lined up like dominoes. They will be much more creatively spaced than that. Some of them will share common garages and carports. Some will have the availability of space for their own garage or carport. In addition to that, we are designing into the village a storage area for things such as additional cars, trucks, boats, RVs, trailers, the type of thing that may not fit on a small lot. It's very common in current mobile home park design to establish such a storage area, a you-store-it type facility for additional possessions and equipment and material that will not fit in your home or for which you don't have space on your lot. And that is the primary concept there. The various design features of this development have now been put into written form, and we have completed, as of just a few days ago, a document entitled Application Preliminary Agreement and Master Plan. This is intended to be a preliminary master plan for the Golden Age Village at Glastonbury North, and in it you will find a statement, a very clear and concise statement of all the various aspects of the development and exactly what can be expected there. The reason we have put this document together is not only to acquaint you with what the development will be, but also to serve as a guide for the various engineering personnel working on the project so they know exactly in written form what it is that we want to have included in this development. This project is being engineered jointly by a professional firm of engineers who is experienced in the area in subdivision and mobile home park design, as well as by our own engineering staff. So some of the concepts included in this that I have not already mentioned, obviously first of which is that this is being designed both as a retirement community as well as a community for single persons and families, etc. There will be areas that are for retired people only, areas that will be mixed, in which single persons, retired persons, families, etc. can all live in a mixed neighborhood. There will be areas set aside for single-wide homes and areas set aside for double-wide mobile homes in specific neighborhoods. And again, we have designed it in such a way that each of these loops or areas that are set aside forms a separate neighborhood and an enclave in which the particular character of that neighborhood is distinct and apart from other areas. There will be walkways from within the development that will be separate from the streets and will not generally follow the same corridors as the streets. There are various parks, playgrounds, common areas, open spaces that will be utilized for this purpose, as well as for part of the concept for the sewage treatment system and the disposal of drain field type water into the earth underneath the ground. There'll be, as I mentioned, parks and landscaping. The main drive into the community proceeds in a descending loop toward the middle area next to the community center. That has no mobile homes on it whatsoever. That will be lined by landscaping on either side of the main drive of about 25 feet in width. There will be covenants and certain rules in the mobile home community that will be not only commensurate with the rest of Glastonbury, but also are intended primarily to set a standard for the quality of mobile homes to be put into the development, or by which homes can be retrofitted to fit the character of what the village should look like. All of these things are set forth in the master plan, or the preliminary master plan. Once we have completed our design work over the next several months, we will issue a final statement on exactly what will be included in the development. And so any person desiring to become a part of this or to apply for residency here will know exactly what will be included. The qualifications for residency in the Golden Age Village are basically the same as for other residents of the community of Glastonbury. and that involves an application process, and it is for communicants in good standing of the church, tithing communicants, which is the standard that has been set for the rest of Glastonbury. Now, it will be necessary for us to pursue again a development application before Park County, and we intend to complete our design work and to submit that application sometime in the next month. We have set a target for sometime later in May for submitting that application, and the period over which it will be considered is 60 days that the county has to consider it. So this will take the consideration by the county sometime close to the month of August, prior to the time of which we will not know, of course, whether the final approval has been given or not. Once that has taken place, there is an additional period of some 5 to 7 months for completing the final engineering on the project, which involves the actual design of the water and sewage systems, the grading plan, the electrical systems, telephone, etc. That means that at this point in time, it's quite obvious that there is no construction work that could begin on the mobile home on the Golden Age Village until spring of next year, about this time next year. We do hope, if once all the approvals have been obtained, including the State Health Department, that we can break ground on this by next spring, and from then the construction of the village, for however many units will be contained in it, will take place over a 2-year period. That takes us to 1987. The reason I am mentioning all of this is to reveal the fact to you that this is a 2 to 2.5 year project that we are undertaking, and that we feel it's necessary at this time for us to know what persons and how many persons are actually interested in availing themselves of residency here. The reason the preliminary master plan has also taken the form of an application is so that you can have the opportunity to read it, and if interested, you can now apply at this time for residency. We are accepting applications at this time, and it's very important for us, as I mentioned, to know a fairly good idea of the numbers of people who will be interested in actually committing to lease a mobile home site in the Golden Age Village. As I mentioned, we are interested in attracting retired persons here. We feel that this is the ideal environment for persons at that stage in life because of the simplicity of the development and of actually taking up occupancy there. There is not a large lot to be developed and for you to drill a well on it and to undertake all of those kinds of things. All of this will be provided in a very compact and efficient manner. So these packets of information are being made available by us at this time in the Glastonbury room that is set up here at this conference. If you are interested in this in any way, I would urge you to stop by and have a look at it. Feel free to discuss this with Richard Kaler and the other people that are manning that office here. And if you have in mind, if you even believe that you would want to qualify for residency in the Golden Age Village, I would urge you to apply immediately. We do have to know by sometime in May how many people are interested, and we do have to make a decision at that time on what number we are going to design this community to serve. So now is the time for us to know what kind of a commitment we have to make so that we don't overcommit and overbuild for something for which there is not a fairly clearly demonstrated demand. There is also an additional reason why we would like to have your application and commitment at this time. I should mention as an aside to this, first of all, that this does not involve a legal commitment on your part at this time. The application process is something that we would like to go through and to accept people for on a tentative basis, but it does not involve a legal obligation on your part to ultimately follow through and lease the mobile home site, although obviously it is our consideration that the vast majority of those who apply at this time full well intend to carry through with the commitment. The legal commitment will come later after the Planning Board and the County Commissioners have acted on the application, and that will be the time at which we will know exactly what all of the final design details will be, and there will be something for persons to commit to on both sides. In any event, the other important reason I was mentioning for this application process at this time is the fact that we have to submit an application to the county for a mobile home subdivision, and this involves the same criteria that they use for normal subdivisions. And one of the major criteria that is being considered by them and is considered repeatedly by planning boards in other counties is the basis of the need for the subdivision. It's one of the most subjective criteria that is used by the counties, and it's very easy for them to say, well, we just don't believe that there's a need at this time for this subdivision since there's plenty of lots available, so we're going to deny your application. That is something that's very difficult to fight in court. However, it is possible to clearly demonstrate a need for it in advance, and that is one of the purposes that this application will fulfill, because it states right in the text of the application that you desire to live in this Golden Age village and that you have a need for it yourself for this type of development, and that such an opportunity does not otherwise exist in Park County, which of course it doesn't, because we've researched it, and the mobile home lots that are available in the area, of which there aren't many, are very poorly designed, almost no landscaping. Generally, they're just set out in the middle of the field and lined up like dominoes, and that's about all that's available. So this is the dual reason for this at this time. It is our basic consideration that we would like our presentation to the county to be flawless. We want to consider in advance all of the various criteria that could come into play, all of the very technical considerations that should be taken into account by the Planning Board and the County Commissioners, and to answer all of those in advance. And of course, the basis of the need for the subdivision is one of the most important. It is appearing somewhat likely at this point in time that this process through the Planning Board, in which public hearings will be held, will take place very close to the time of the July conference. And if it comes to pass that the July conference will be held at the inter-retreat, it's very likely that many persons who are interested in becoming residents here and who have submitted applications will themselves be in the area. So it's very possible that you will have the opportunity to attend that planning board hearing yourself and to express your own views in relation to what other people have to say, such as maybe other residents or whatever. So if you apply, that's something that we will keep you posted on, and it's certainly something to take into consideration. As far as additional details are concerned on the development, we will be holding a meeting on Monday evening. There will be a reception for prospective purchasers at Glastonbury, as well as persons desiring to lease a mobile home lot at the Golden Age Village. That will be at 7 p.m. on Monday evening, and that will take place in the foyer of the mansion and the patio in El Moria's room. Now, the next item I wanted to bring to your attention is the matter of the Mulherron Creek Road. There have been some developments that have taken place here. I think everybody was pretty well brought up to date on what was taking place at the last conference. However, shortly after the time that I arrived back in Montana, there was a letter that was received from the Forest Supervisor of the Gallatin National Forest, Mr. John T. Drake. And I believe that those of you who provided written comments to the Forest Service should also have received a copy of this letter. It was a form letter, and it advised of the following information, which I feel is important enough to bring you up to date to read it at this time. It says, "Thank you for your comments on the mall heron access proposal. It was one of 2,800 which we received. These public responses identified many concerns over our mall heron access study. The majority of these concerns fell into the categories of the rights of private landowners, freedom of religion, protection of the grizzly bear, rights of access to public lands, and private landowner control of public lands. In addition to the specific mall heron access proposal, we have over the past few years been evaluating other potential accesses in the same general vicinity. As a result of the recent public comments, we now intend to consolidate these efforts and evaluate the need for public and national forest administrative access on a larger area. By considering a larger area, I think we can do a better job of developing and exhibiting needs and impacts, as well as mitigating many of the concerns that people have identified. The analysis area is bordered on the north by the Rock Creek-Tom Miner Divide, on the west by the Gallatin-Yellowstone Divide, on the south by Yellowstone National Park, and on the east by the Yellowstone River. As part of this analysis, we will complete a comprehensive biological evaluation of potential impacts on the grizzly bear. In developing this evaluation, we will consult with Yellowstone National Park, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Montana State Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. A summary of the analysis will be available later this winter. There will be a 30-day public review and comment period. An environmental assessment and decision notice should be available this spring or summer. If you would like a copy of the analysis summary, please send your request to John Drake, Forest Supervisor, Gallatin National Forest, P.O. Box 130, Bozeman, Montana 59771. Again, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us on this proposal. Please do not hesitate to contact us again if you should have any further questions at this time, or if you would like to receive a copy of the analysis summary later this winter. I would recommend, first of all, if you did not receive this, or if you have not written to the Forest Service to directly receive a copy of the so-called analysis summary, that you do so at once, and I can give you that address again right now. That would be John Drake, Forest Supervisor, Gallatin National Forest, Post Office Box 130, Bozeman, Montana 59771. I think it's important for us each to receive directly from the Forest Service our own copy of this document because of the fact that they are only allowing an additional 30-day comment period after that draft environmental assessment is released. That means if we receive it and we develop our comments on it and then send them to you, there's a lag time in there of a week to 2 weeks, so that by the time you receive it, you're not left with much time on your own to formulate your comments and write your letters. It is very important for us to provide our comment and our statement on this matter. I think that the fact that many people commented before, I think there were well over 1,000 or 1,200 responses received that were not in favor of the access at all from out of state, and there were an additional 400 or 500 received from in-state that were not in favor of the access, that these had a tremendous impact on the Forest Service and created a mandate, as it were, that could not be ignored by them. So I think that we do have a voice to be heard and something that they have to listen to and take into consideration. I will give you the address again for those of you who have not written it down yet. It's John Drake, Forest Supervisor, Gallatin National Forest, Post Office Box 130, Bozeman, Montana 59771. When you write to them, be sure to ask for you to be put on their mailing list on any matters relating to the Mulherron Creek access proposal. And specifically, you should ask to be able to receive a copy of the analysis summary on the Mulherron Creek access proposal when it is issued later this spring. Obviously, it has not come out yet. They were talking about releasing it later in the winter, and it has not taken place yet. And I think that the magnitude of the response that has been received from you and other persons has been formed a sufficient deterrent to any summary type of action that they may have originally planned to take, that they are now being very careful and are going into a much more in-depth analysis on exactly what it is that they're proposing. There's an additional argument that is now being raised by various sportsmen's groups and citizens who have been in favor of the access all along, which I should draw to your attention. This is the fact that the Billings Rod and Gun Club and the Montana Wilderness Society, or I believe it's Montana Wilderness Federation, something like that, fairly influential wildlife groups, held meetings and decided that they wanted to recommend that the Forest Service go ahead and take the access, and then that there should be provisions within that process of creating a road that would protect the environment and would mitigate the factors that have been raised by other people as being detrimental aspects of the proposal. These would involve such things as the Forest Service agreeing not to log or to give out timber sales on the forest land, not to give out mineral leases or oil and gas leases, and to relinquish to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service the decision-making authority on when to allow or not to allow public travel on the road. These proposals, on the face of them, would go a long way towards creating an environment where people may think, well, all of these environmental things are now taken care of because they're not going to log it, they're not going to give out oil and gas leases, and they're not going to disturb the grizzly bears, so we might as well have the road. The only problem with that, and the factor that is going to have to be brought to everyone's attention, is that these people are asking the Forest Service to commit to something and to make promises that it cannot be held to and that it cannot keep. The reason for this is that the Forest Service, of course, is a federal public agency. There are a long string of court decisions that have held that such commitments and promises by a federal agency are not binding, cannot be made binding, and are in fact against public policy for agencies such as these to bind themselves to decisions of future managers. So they could commit to this now, but it would be an illusory promise, and it's very possible that the Forest Service, under new management in the future or under the development of new plans in the future, once they had the road in hand, could then change their mind and say, well, we have a new policy now, and the policy now says to log it, to give out oil and gas leases, and to forget the grizzly bear. This is a very real consequence of their action, and so it's something that collectively those who respond to the proposals of the Forest Service are going to have to draw to the public's attention, to the newspaper's attention, and of course to the attention of the Forest Service themselves, as if they weren't already aware of it. So this draft analysis will be coming out soon. We will be needing to line up our arguments in preparation for that 30-day comment period. And as I mentioned, it's very important to get on that Forest Service mailing list and to start formulating your own individual arguments. I will be sending out a mailing on this subject in the near future, and also a mailing on the subject when the draft analysis comes out, outlining any flaws that we see in the proposal for your own use as you may see fit. I would also advise at this point in time, the Forest Service took particular pains to determine on the face of any letter that was sent into the Forest Service on this subject as to whether the person was a church member or not. The propriety of that particular course of action is questionable, but nevertheless it has been done, and it can be seen as an obvious maneuver by the Forest Service to lessen the value of all of those comments by saying, well, these comments are just all church members, so we'll just look at them as just one big comment because they all say the same thing. So it is my advice in future communications with the Forest Service that you not identify yourself as a church member, that you simply make your comments and avail yourself of the right of redress and public comment that you have as an American citizen. Finally, at this point in time, due to the lateness of the date that they're coming out with their final information, it's very likely again that this public comment period could lap over the time when many of us might be in Montana, again if the July conference is to be held in Montana this year. And I think that would provide a very good opportunity for a very concerted effort to bring these matters to the public's attention and the Forest Service attention by being all in one place at the same time. There's an additional matter which is somewhat related to this, and that is the so-called Park Buffer Zone Bill, which is now being considered in the Senate. This was entitled the National Park Protection and Resources Management Act of 1983 and passed the House of Representatives as the bill entitled H.R. 2379. This bill would create a national park protection scheme and process, and it would designate lands adjacent to national park units in the United States as protected areas. Under the current scheme conceived of in this act, the buffer zone would affect only other federal lands or lands upon which any federal action were taking place. This could conceivably be extended to include such items as federal assistance to farms and ranches, of which almost every farm and ranch has some form of federal assistance, federal lending programs, dam projects, cost share projects by the soil conservation people for dams and reservoirs, irrigation projects, etc. And it's very possible that if people in the national park system determined that any of these actions did not suit the protection of the national park, that they could veto them and effectively cut this aid off even to private citizens. In addition to that, it's certainly a known fact at this time that almost all local governments are dependent upon federal aid for their educational programs, road programs, and things of this sort under the revenue sharing concept. It's very possible that the authority given in this bill could be used as a means to cut off local governments from this federal aid which they depend on and are in effect addicted to force them to pass restrictive land use and zoning laws for areas in local governmental jurisdictions adjoining national parks. The effect of that applied to our situation would effectively mean that the Park Service could say to the government of Park County, either you pass a zoning law severely restricting the use of private land adjacent to national parks in the next year, or we're going to cut off your revenue sharing funds, in which event the county would promptly pass the zoning law because there's nothing that they can do about it. They have to have those funds. So this is a dangerous act. It's something that has very dangerous precedents in it, and we are actively working against it, both with our decrees and through your own interaction and written comments to your own representatives. If you would like to write to your representative in Congress concerning this, you should address letters to your senators, the senators who represent your state, as well as to the Senate Natural Resources Committee. This information will be made available for us. For those of you who are interested, I will make it available at the Inner Retreat booth that is set up at this conference. You can get the names and addresses of individuals involved who are the chairmen of those committees. I know that one of them is Senator McClure, who is probably the key person in the Senate, who stands in a position to be either to clear this law for passage or to block it. There's concern among the land use advocates that this bill will pass because it's an election year, and there are many even conservative senators who are worried about their chances for re-election and would like to be able to have on their record that they're for the protection of our parks. And of course, as is the case in many of these bills, they are worded somewhat innocuously, and the intent of the whole thing is to protect the national parks It's the fine print and the loosely worded provisions that are the dangerous part of it. And that is what we are working against. Numerous amendments have been proposed on this bill, almost all of which have been rejected in the House. And so the bill in its present form has not been mitigated or watered down in any measure to protect the rights of landowners. Additional matter I wanted to bring to your attention concerns Camelot. As many of you are undoubtedly aware, Camelot has been targeted by the National Park Service for acquisition for quite a number of years now. I believe the bill enacting the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area was enacted in 1978, and almost immediately as the administrative network for this recreation area was established, this property, Camelot itself, has been designated as one of the top, or if not the top, acquisition scheduled for the Santa Monica Mountains Recreation Area. The U.S. government position, however, since the election of the Reagan administration, has been decidedly against such park acquisitions, and there has been very little funding available for park acquisitions, and consequently we found ourselves in a rather safe position as far as the condemnation of Camelot was concerned. However, I'm sure almost all of you are aware of the fact that Mr. Watt has now been ousted from his position. He was the chief person forming a block to such park acquisitions. And now we have a new man in there, Mr. William P. Clark, who has publicly stated that he and the administration are now changing their position and have become in favor of prudent acquisitions for parks. As a result of this, we have been notified by the Park Service that we are still a priority acquisition, that Camelot is on the targeted list, as it were, for acquisitions for national parks, parklands in the Santa Monica Mountains Recreation Area. And of course, our understanding has always been that their intent was to establish Camelot as the headquarters of the Santa Monica Mountains Recreation Area because of all the buildings and offices and flat land that it has. Now, of course, an acquisition by condemnation and the process that is undertaken leading up to that result is something that we have no control over directly ourselves. This is something that is within the prerogative of government, particularly the federal government, and they have initiated a process which has been reported in local newspapers of commissioning a market value appraisal for Camelot to take place sometime this year. In addition to that, we have already received some indications that the Park Service intends to treat us in the same manner as other landowners and victims of the acquisition process by attempting to justify in its condemnation process a value that is far less than what we know the actual value of the property to be. Of course, we don't intend to allow this to happen, and at this point in time, we have certainly made no agreement of any sort whatsoever for the sale of Camelot to the government for any price, whether it be a high or a low price. We have, however, at this time, embarked upon the process of clarifying the zoning and land use allowances for this property, which comprises a total of about 250 some acres, and of securing the necessary prerequisites through the County of Los Angeles that would allow this property to be developed. In effect, we have on this property certain alternatives for commercial development, for residential development, and for institutional development, and that is the zoning for the property and the land use categories that are currently in effect. That has been the case almost since the time that we purchased the property, and we have known all along that these were the items that were options for us to pursue. So, in view of the current political climate in the County of Los Angeles, and in view of in the impending elections and the possible change of that political climate, we have elected at this time to pursue those options that we have and to pursue certain development applications for Camelot along the lines of residential, commercial, and institutional property. Now, you may be hearing about this. It's very possible that this could appear in the local newspapers, and we wanted to advise you of it so that you are aware of exactly why we are doing it and exactly what is involved. Essentially, we have determined that it's important for us at this point in time, and is also an opportune moment for us to protect and secure the value of our property and the investment we've made in it by securing those development approvals, or at least preliminary approvals, which will clarify and will set the value, the market value for the property based upon its highest and best use. Highest and best use is the measuring stick for a market value appraisal, and there's no question that that residential and commercial development, as well as institutional development of a portion of this property, is a much higher and better use market value-wise than, for example, prime farmland. Now, there are individuals who have made statements to the effect that this Clarettville property is prime farmland and it should be preserved as prime farmland. Well, of course, prime farmland, is worth about, 5% or 1% of what prime residential land and prime commercial land is worth. So it's very important for us to be able to clarify our zoning categories at this point. Along the farmland issue, we have also been advised by the Las Virgenes Water District that reclaimed water will now no longer be available at a free cost as it has been in the past. And that is the single most item that has made farming the Camelot grounds here feasible. They now want to receive about $110 per acre foot for water, and if you figure we have to put 2 to 3 feet of water on every acre that we have here for farming purposes, you can see that we're getting up to about $300 an acre, and you'd have to be growing money trees to be able to pay for that and be able to come out ahead from a standpoint of farmland. So I think that pretty well clarifies that issue, and hopefully there will be no question on anybody's part as to exactly what our intent is. Our intent is to develop this property and to secure its value. I wanted to give you a current update on the Inter-Retreat fundraising campaign. We have raised and paid to Malcolm Forbes to date a total of $1,055,829. That is probably over 70%. It's over 2/3 of the way towards reaching our annual goal with Forbes. When you think about it, that's really way ahead of where we were last year. I think last year at this point in time we were running around halfway, probably around 750,000, and we're panicking as to whether we would be able to hold the summer conference or not, whether we should, were we going to run short of the annual payment, etc. And as you know, we had set the goal this year of being able to reach the full amount of that annual payment by the 1st of June, by raising a total of about $240,000 for each month from January through May. We have come very close to reaching that. We are a little bit behind schedule, but I think the campaign is doing very well at this point in time. The balance that we still need to raise in order to meet the annual payment goal by the end of May is a total of $408,000, and that takes into account a certain amount of funds that we still have on hand in our bank account, which is being held for the next incremental payment to Forbes. We have been paying Forbes on a regular basis. As we received fairly large increments of funds, we have been paying portions of that annual payment, so that that $1,055,000 has been paid, and we still have some money on hand and about $408,000 that we need to complete the campaign. Even though we're behind schedule, and even though it's not for certain that the goal will be reached yet, we are confident at the rate the entire process is going and the enthusiasm with which everybody has been approaching this campaign. And of course, the clock is really ticking down at this point in time on really paying off the property in full, because by the time we meet this year's goal for making the payment, there'll only be 1 year left, and the inner retreat will be free and clear. So I know we're all looking forward to that. Since things are looking pretty good, and we are confident that the Keepers of the Flame are going to meet the challenge and will continue to keep the campaign rolling in as it has in the past several months, we have therefore decided to make the commitment to definitely go ahead with holding this year's July conference in the heart of the inner retreat. And of course, we all know what that means. Helios and Vesta are scheduled to make a very momentous visit to the heart of the inner retreat this year, and we have now made that commitment, and by God's grace it will happen. There will be materials being sent out soon on the conference. There is a poster that is in the print shop now, being prepared. It's very possible that it will be available tomorrow, and certainly by Monday if you wish to take some home with you. There was a dictation, I think you'll recall, at the New Year's conference by beloved Saint Germain, mentioning the conference at New Year's time and stating the desire of the Brotherhood that the public be invited to attend and allowed to attend that inner retreat conference upcoming this year. We are making this available to the general public, and of course this could mean a drastically increased conference attendance and a much greater need for facilities and personnel and all the things that go into making up a conference. One of the requests that Saint Germain made at that time was for some commitment from Keepers of the Flame for the preparation for that conference, the actual preparation of the land, as well as the putting on of the conference through assistance with all of the duties that the staff must perform at conferences. These include things like manning booths, working in the kitchen, helping direct traffic, cleaning up, keeping the campgrounds in good order, policing the area, etc., helping at registration, typing. There are innumerable jobs that go into putting on a conference, and it is our request, and it is, as I understand it, was the Brotherhood's requests, that Keepers of the Flame assist in this process as they are available. So if you would be available to help, in the times that we need your help would be the 1 to 4 weeks preceding the conference for setting up, or the 1 to 4 weeks following the conference for taking down and clean up, or for the actual 10 days that the conference itself will run. These are our needs, and if you can help in any one or more of these areas, we would appreciate it if you could contact our conference department here at Camelot, and either by mail or by telephone, and let us know what you can do, what your skills are, and when we could expect you to arrive up there. Now, the conference dates this year will run from June 29 through July 8th. That's 10 days of Ascended Master Conference. The registration at the East Gate this year will be $150. However, we have a pre-registration availability for $125. There will be a cutoff date established on that sometime in June for your pre-registration. So if you know you want to attend, and if you know others who do, by all means, encourage them to pre-register and save on it. It also gives us some of the funds in advance to be able to make the commitments for renting the tents, acquiring the food, and doing all the work that's necessary, and making the financial commitments that are necessary for the putting on of such a large conference. Now, the other reason that I wanted to mention and emphasize the importance of your assisting in the putting on of this conference is because of the fact that in past years, a large portion of the responsibility has fallen on the inter-retreat staff for the preparation of the land and for actually performing a lot of the services that occur at a conference. And of course, the Camelot staff has had a very heavy commitment in putting on these conferences also, and has had to travel en masse to attend the conference, many times having to leave their workstations 2 to 4 weeks in advance of the conference to be able to ready everything. I think it's very important for us this year, particularly with the commitment we are seeking to make in setting up Joyous Isle at the industrial park, and in the moving of our offices, distribution and Joyous Isle offices from Camelot and the book inventory and so on. It's very important for us to be able to maintain the momentum that we are now building. And we are building a very good momentum on all of our construction projects that are going on at the ranch. We have a staff in excess of 100 people now. There are new people arriving all the time. And we want to be able to keep that momentum and not to have to break it again for 3 to 4 weeks by having to take everybody off for that conference prep. So if you can in any way help out or be of service to the Brotherhood in this capacity, you'll be helping not only put on the conference, but in an indirect manner, you will be helping to keep those projects going at the inter-retreat and to keep that momentum up, which is being maintained primarily so that we can meet the timetable of the master plan that the masters have given us, that the Brotherhood has given us for the development of the inter-retreat in the timetable that has been set for it. Now, I think that concludes my comments on the conference. There is one final matter that I wanted to bring to your attention at this time, and that involves the subject of the economy. We have had quite a number of requests in the past several months from people, inquiries on their part about their own future financial plans and their investment plans vis-a-vis the future health of the economy as it now appears to be as we enter this recovery under the Reagan economic plan that people believe is now taking effect. Now, many persons are, of course, basing their future economic decisions in regard to Glastonbury and the liquidation of their properties and their future economic commitments on the current status of the economy and where they think it will be going in the next year or two. We normally do not like to give financial advice, and we do not give investment advice except as has been endorsed by the Brotherhood. And there are certainly certain things that the Brotherhood has brought to our attention in the past decade and even more so in the past several years. Also, I think in regard to what a number of people are thinking at this time, certainly a word of caution is in order, and there are certain matters that we would like to bring to your attention. There are a number of economists as well as some of the more perceptive commentators on economic matters who issue newsletters and things of this sort, who have been warning recently that the so-called Reagan economic recovery is itself a very illusory recovery and is not in fact a recovery at all. And what appears to be a recovery may be extremely short-lived. The gap that we have here in this nation and in our economic thinking between what really amounts to wishful thinking as opposed to the reality of the situation is demonstrated in two facts that I would like to draw to your attention. The first is, of course, a matter, and both of these are matters I'm sure of which we're all aware, but looking at them in perspective, we have the matter of the unbelievable budget deficits that the country is encountering at this time in the nature of $200 to $300 billion per year. Now, when Mr. Reagan was elected, that budget deficit total of all years preceding that was only a little bit over $900 billion. And since he has taken office, the deficits per year are now approaching $300 billion. That means for every year we are increasing the national debt by 1/3 of what it had been for the many decades and almost up to 100 years of what it had taken to accumulate that in the past. That is, in my opinion, an astronomical figure, and it is a figure that will result in very adverse economic circumstances eventually. The other factor that is something that has been swept under the carpet but is with us and is not going to go away is the factor of the massive foreign debt that is owed to this country from third world and communist and developing nations that has not been repaid and in all likelihood will never be repaid because these nations do not have the capability of repaying this debt. There are billions and hundreds of billions of dollars approaching actually the size of the national debt itself in these foreign debts that are taxpayers, American citizens' money, which has been deposited in our banks, such as the Chase Manhattan Bank and the Chemical Bank, and these large conglomerate banks that has then been loaned out by these banks without any restriction whatsoever from our government to foreign countries. In effect, this is your money, all of our money collectively, that has been given away to these foreign governments, and there's very little hope that we will ever be repaid. In view of these circumstances, we're obviously looking at huge hundreds of billions of dollars worth of debt and deficit spending that will never be recovered. The result of these conditions is one of two things. The result could be a renewed instance of runaway inflation, much worse than we've ever seen here before, or the result could be the exact opposite, a new terrible recession or even a depression rivaling or even exceeding the Great Depression of the 1930s. Exactly what happens depends in large part upon the decisions made by people in government, the Federal Reserve policies that are adopted, who is elected in this coming year, and the acts of Congress on budgetary matters. If a very restrictive monetary policy and Federal Reserve policy is adopted, and very restrictive policies on lending and on spending are adopted, it's very possible that a new recession or depression could result due to the slowdown in the economy, because the economy at this point depends very much on continued infusions of cash to keep things heated up. The other result, of course, could be runaway inflation based upon the fact that the government elects to create new money to pay the deficits and to monetize the debt that we have. I think the latter is the more likely scenario to take place, but I would hate to hazard a guess or a prediction at this point in time. Either way, this is the result for the citizen on the street is largely the same. Either you lose your purchasing power of your money or you lose your money altogether. One thing or another, if we end up in a depression or in a hyperinflationary period, many people will lose everything they have and will lose the value of what they have. The masters have given us over the period of the last decade, and even more so in the last several years, advice for the Chilas to follow to protect themselves from these conditions. And I wanted to emphasize at this point that this word of caution